Okay, great. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody, whoever has joined. Thank you again for joining in the last session of 2020. And what a way to kind of close 2020 off with a great friend, a great speaker, whom I have had privilege of talking for the last few months, and finally I get to hear his point of view on agility and spirit of experimentation, which itself is a great topic. I feel because if you don't experiment, then you don't do and be agile. That's something which I believe in as well. Um, so just a couple of thank you notes before we crack on. One is I'm really indebted to thank UV City, who have been providing the platform for me to host all my APGI sessions as well as my own Agile Amigo sessions in 2020 with all the difficult times. And I got an opportunity to speak at a conference in the United States, and that's where I found UVCT. So then on, the relationship has been great, and they have been providing all sorts of I mean, they're meeting all our web hosting platform needs. So if anybody is interested to host their own sessions like how we have done, please contact me. I'll put you in touch with those um, back office people from UVCT, and you can also do the same thing. They kind of give you the host license of Zoom, and no limited audience. You can invite any number of people, and you can go on for any number of hours. So that is the advantage of going to UVCT. And of course, people like you who are passionate on a Saturday afternoon, evening, or mornings, especially people in the UK with bright sun, peeking at your window. You're sitting here and learning something new about Agile, which is definitely appreciable, because you do the same thing for 5 days, and sixth day with dedicating your time to this. I think it is definitely, it deserves a big thank you. um, Last but not least, of course, our speaker today. Before I introduce Mahesh to you all, I'd like to give a little brief about APGI. Of course, I don't have any slides to share today. I just wanted to make it more conversational session. So APGI in 2015, three of us kind of began this journey in Pune when I was in Pune at that time. And later on, we've done four conferences face to face in Pune and a few meetups, including today's. I think we have touched 40. So 40 meetups. And there are many people on this call who have been speakers for APGI. So in next year, we would again like to do a fresh beginning, and hopefully, if government of India allows us to meet face to face, then definitely there is a face to face conference that we want to schedule in Pune. And imagine if you are from Chennai or Delhi or Mumbai, if you want to do the same thing as APGI conference there, please get in touch with me. I can tell you how we can spread our wings. So that's a little about APGI, and of course we wanted to experiment. That's a classic example again for today's session. We wanted to, I'll bring the examples later. I don't want to spoil the fun of what Mahesh is going to bring onto the table. But anyways, so without further ado, I wanted to introduce Mahesh Jade. He is a passionate agile evangelist, and of course about a decade's experience in agile transformation in different sectors like banking, e-commerce products, etc. And the way I have interacted with him for a few months now, I I think he believes that inspiration or inspiring people and trust becoming an important factor over command and control. So that is something which I personally like, and I think for agility to sustain, these are way too important. in terms of inspiration, inspiring people, and trusting each other is very, very important. And of course, I'd let him to introduce himself. And yeah, Mahesh, all to you, completely yours, your playground. Go for it.
Thank you, Sri. I mean, I really can't thank you enough. I mean, thank you for the kind words. And I know since the time we started interacting, it has been a lot of opportunities and a lot of sessions that I would come to the APGI meetups on weekends. They were all very valuable. And then this opportunity got open up. So it was very wonderful. And the, I mean, to everyone, guys, the topic of experimentation I have always been very close to my heart. And today we wanted to wanted to talk about that, but in a way that we experiment with something. So today we have just experimented with this Prezi video, wherein we have a graphical presentation which gets merged with the speaker view, and it is animated, and we'll see how that moves up, and it makes the conversation very interactive and very visual. So we are actually trying to live up that to that spirit of experimentation while we are talking. One of the things we are doing here is on purpose. I have kept my talk limited to 40 to 50 minutes only, and that intentional gap that we will have after that, maybe 20-30 minutes, we'll just try to have a dialogue that is getting built up on the way. With each slide that we'll bring up, we will have more opportunities to share our experiences and maybe some of our memories that whenever we have encountered similar situations and how we dealt with them. But with that, maybe I'll just try to get started here, and we'll keep it very conversational. At any point of time we have something, just call it out. I'll go slow so that we are covering the views from everyone. So this tool, because it is giving a very good opportunity to do an intro, it allows me to put that in graphical view. My name is Mahesh Jade. I really like to call myself as a change agent, and I like that phrase. And agile evangelist. It just comes out very well together. It brings the spirit of co-learning. It brings the spirit of bringing up changes, changing the environments altogether. So just as an introduction, a quick one, maybe LinkedIn and Twitter are two places I'm very active. And the reason to call them out is because many times whenever I'm interacting with somebody and coming across some good happening into world of agile, I tend to share that on LinkedIn and Twitter. So that's an intent. Maybe if we are connected on LinkedIn and Twitter, we can explore common opportunities and come together more often. Um, Recently, I was very lucky to get on the Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, and it was again a co-learning opportunity. I have been listening to them, but then 5 episodes we have recently recorded and they are live. So just if you are interested, if you are finding that interesting, you can just visit that. And then on top of it, recently me and founder of Agile Bodhi, Padma Priya Devarajan, we wrote a research paper which is about to get published into IJTRD, which stands for International Journal of Trained in Research and Development. So that is again something we can just explore offline wherever interested. Now coming back to today's session, what are desired outcomes, and that is going to be of great interest for us. So today we are looking at four things. We are looking at when we say we are trying to get agile, we want to experiment more. So firstly today we want to accept where we have come from. What are our starting points before we were agile, or maybe because some of us, or many of us, we come from SDLC background. Then the second thing is we want to look at the ways we can pick the real essence of the core of the agile, not just following the practices or not just doing ceremonies one after another, but really picking up the core. That will be the second part of our desired outcome. Third one will be pulling out some influences to foster agility via our talk and examples that we would be talking about. And the last one would be an interesting metaphor that we want to propose today, which will help us to collect all the thoughts from the today's session together and have a memory and have some action point and action agenda for us. So having said that, maybe I'll just go ahead and pick up the first item that we want to talk about, and it is about accepting where we have come from. So we all know that any of us, we started our journey into agile from SDLC background. And in those times, we all know that in SDLC, we used to have the phase of analysis, and then we'll design and then we'll develop. So there was always a mental wiring that something comes to us which is ready, which is quite considered, which is quite ready, and then we start executing that. But having that mindset, maybe sometimes we say that we are agile, but still we have those inferences where we tend to look at the things until they get into good shape, and we only want to execute things in a way that we do them one after another. So one of the things that we have maybe misunderstood from agile is that we are here not to just produce more output, but more outcome. And when we say more outcome, the outcome which is desired by people, by the end customers, or by the users of the system. So having said that, I know the point we are trying to put forward is that we have an old wiring, and we if we accept that, then we are more prone to get that wiring to a new state. And with the old wiring, we should understand that the people, maybe us or the part of the team, they are, some of them or most of them have come from SDLC background. So we have to be cognizant of that fact. And as well as the organizations, they have come from a background when they used to be very much sure about something they want to do, and then they will get started. So these things exist in terms of people and organization both. And then if we have to look at one of the umber sign, and to recognize if we are having the old wiring or so that becomes very evident. So if a particular company is looking at agile for more output, then that is definitely a sign of an umber sign for them. So as an agilist, as scrum masters, or as servant leaders, or maybe the new term says that the leader who serves in the new scrum guide, we should look at this umber sign, that coming from an old wiring, if we find that our companies or our people, we are focusing on more output out of agile, then there is a time to get adjusted. And maybe some of the ways we can consider are those, that are we considering that, are we building a sense of community, are we bringing people together to explore something, are we really not just initiatives, but prolonged initiatives and frequent initiatives, are we doing them on co-learning, are we making people come together co-learn, is that happening? And then agile very much brings this and coins these terms of time boxing. But are we time boxing for more outputs, just to complete the stories and finish the epics, or are we time boxing for having experiments on the go? So these three things, if we start keeping an attention on, then maybe this umber sign is one of the thing when people are mostly looking at agile to do more in terms of output, that will get shifted to producing more outcome, which is again more valuable for the end customer as well as the person who is doing that in the spirit of learning as well as executing. And then people always have this agile transformation program, and then they come to know about the four values. And just a very small call out I want to make here is that sometimes we actually start getting to do A, not B, but it is always and always it is A over B. So in our daily day-to-day conversations, while our interactions at any point of time, if we start having those conversations that we value individuals and interactions, but we are not saying that processes and tools are not important. Just as an example.
Mahesh,
Yeah.
sorry to interrupt. Um, I have a few notes from people that they can't see see the screen in full. So I don't know, Sundar, can you see the screen in full now?
Uh, I can see Mahesh. I mean, same as in the view of the speaker's view, and the slides are within that. I can't see it fully. I'm not sure. Is it just me experiencing that, or is that with everyone?
Same with
We
me.
can we can see the screen only. It's in
There
full
is a
way.
there is a option on the screen. In the Mahesh screen, if you see, there is three dots, and there you just pin that screen. Then
Yeah,
it
you
will
can see
get
that.
a bigger screen, full screen.
Okay,
Could
sure.
you please
Thank you.
try that? Yeah,
Thank you. Yeah, I can see it now. Sorry. Thank you.
thanks.
Very
So
good.
super,
Okay,
super.
thanks,
Even I
Sundar.
did that. I wanted to see my own screen in full view. I just pinned that, and Shri have put that in full screen. So hopefully we will have a recording in full screen. So
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
will
Okay, sorry. Yeah, continue.
awesome, awesome. So at this point of time, I was talking to somebody, a very, I mean, my very dear coach to me, and he was telling me that in sort of conversation on agile, people generally talk about a lot of things, but they do not join the dots back to the agile values and agile principles. So that should be one of the habit that we should inculcate, that whenever we are discussing something, we should try to take a quick look at the values and principles. Are we building something on top of them? Because they really happen to be a very good guiding lights which can allow us to stay on the path of fostering agility. So one of the example that we consider was A over B, and we want to reiterate it multiple number of times that it is individual center interaction, but not just that. It is just something that we value more than the second part, which is processes and tools. Having said that, we talked about accepting the old wiring, and we should be cognizant of the fact that we come from that. Then how do we go from that old wiring to the new wiring is the next thing. And at that point of time, I just want to bring our focus to creating mindset and culture. And a very important and quick call out at this point of time. The title of today's presentation, we say it is Devil is always into details. And the key part is that always in that sentence is actually capital. So I myself recall, and many of us might also recall that one point of time when we were working in SDLC fashion, people used to call out that, Devil is always into detail, come up with more details, have good details, have the idea refined, and then we'll try it out. That really does not work in today's world. We have to be very much open to what are the changing situations around. So that always is capital, and that is to say that whenever we are focusing a lot onto details, we are actually going back to STLC ways. So that is one of the key messages we are trying to build here, that details are important, but reasonable details are more important. If we are too much for details, then we are really not experimenting. With that, we'll just shift to the second item agenda, which is about creating a mindset and culture. There we'll try to talk more about that. So having accepted old wiring that people have, and from there, if you want to go for an mindset of agile, and really not just doing agile but being agile, I think one of the key thing which I have learned, and I'm just sharing here, and maybe we can make it more conversational at this point of time, listening from other folks. But I know one of the key thing is that multiplier behavior is so very important, that in agile, if we have people to have better conversations with each other, then we are already there. So because there would be a lot of opportunities that will get open up throughout the conversation, throughout the day, and through any small or big conversation. If we have multiplier behavior, that we pick up something and we say, okay, we have this half cooked food, or we have this half cooked thought, or we have just the starting thought. Can we leverage from there? Can we multiply that? Can we add something to it? Can we come together as a community, and can we build something out of it? It could be working on a particular story, on an epic, or maybe building an enhancement in terms of a process improvement, or it could be a new product idea. At any point of time, if we imbibe that multiplier behavior in people, then we are actually creating the uh, mindset and culture that is required for agile. The second part is love for unknowns. And I can very much relate with that. People having, so as a human, we always strive for safety. That is our basic need. So in companies, in workplaces, if people are really wanting to be very safe, and also having the old wiring, then they will always love the known knowns in their workplaces. So what they know, they want to do it again, and they want to just stick to that, or maybe build something, a small thing on top of it. But if we really want to have a new wiring where people are not just doing agile but they are paying agile, then we have to develop that love for unknowns. So if we try to create some processes where people find out the unknown, people go for them, people explore them, and at the end of the day they crack that unknown part, then we are there. At that point of time, we can say that via that, people are actually hunting for the unknowns. They're picking up the unknowns. They are having multiplier mindset, and they're building something on top of that unknown to have an outcome that is desired by the customer or the user, for that sake. And then love for automation. So this is very important, that we may try to imbibe that spirit of experimentation, but there would be some point of time when into the system. So for example, we are building a banking system where there is a particular part which is a very core logic. There we cannot really experiment. So we do not have much to do there, but there we can find out opportunities where we can have some love for automation. So what is known, we can automate that, and what is unknown, we can unfold that. If we start creating that culture, I think we are there, and then people will people will slowly start moving away from that old wiring and getting into a new wired mind, when they are actually happy when they come across an unknown. They do not feel unsafe that, okay, this part is unknown, and what if I get into it? Is there a risk whether it will get accomplished or what? So building a love for unknowns and building love for automation, and again having multiplier mindset, I think these are the three things. I'm just calling them out, and I know some of us will always have more thing to it. So maybe we would want to hear from others if we have any thoughts at this point of time. I know some of the comments are just popping in. I saw somebody liking the love for unknowns to be very, very good. Maybe we want to just talk
Yeah,
about it.
Mahesh, I hadn't thought about it, but I think really it matches with the mindset and culture that you cannot have, if you are moving from SDLC to Agile and then still say, no, 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 this is not clear, this is not clear, and then how do we progress? Then I think it defeats the purpose of implementing the Agile at the first place. But yeah, I love that word. Good one. Love for unknowns. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we'll just try to multiply this point. So we'll just try to leave whatever we are calling out. We'll just try to leave that spirit. So this thing that we just called out, it perfectly matches with the fun get of DOR. And in one of the session that Mike Cohen conducted a few days ago, and I was listening to that, and they talked about this, that in Agile, we have a definition of ready at some point of time. And if team starts saying that this story is not ready, the details are not there, and will not get started with the story, then slowly we are actually entering a small gate that is again taking us to the waterfall ways of working, that where we are wanting people to analyze and design completely, and then we want to start developing and testing that part. So we have to be very cognizant of that fact, that when we want to create that love for unknowns, and when we want to multiply things on the go, the people should be always asking for reasonable definition of ready, and not a complete set of definition of ready, or maybe stories which are completely ready, having every analysis done, every design part ready. Because there will be a lot of opportunities when somebody is starting to develop a particular piece of UI maybe, and on the go they will receive a certain feedback that will allow them to again take a look at the analysis phase and again the design phase, and that will come out in a more influential, more impactful way. So the DOR is a very fun gate. If we really try to focus on that too much, then we are slowly entering from agile to waterfall. That was a fun part that I wanted to call out, that sometimes a DOR can become a small gate of entry to again waterfall ways of working. At this point, again, another umber sign. We want to see that we want to create a culture of mindset and culture for having an internal wiring that is about not just doing agile, but being agile. But then there is a subtle sign. If in a particular company, we have people who are missing a sense of wonder, and it can very much start from the complete hiring process or maybe in other ways. If we have those sort of things missing into our culture, into our ways of working, that people are not wondering about what is it so, or how is it done, or why, or most importantly, not just why but why not. If people are not asking those sort of questions, that why not we do this, or why can't we consider this, then we are really not having that kind of multiplier mindset or a love for unknowns. That is really not happening. And as an agilist again, or as a scrum masters, or leaders in the companies, what we can do is that we have to think of ways which foster the innovation initiatives. It could be small or little things, and just applicable to the local context or the particular situation or the organization. But as an agilist, we should always have that a focus that we want to build some initiatives that foster innovation. One of the example I can just recall from one of my earlier organization was that we have built an particular initiative when we called it I and D. So you have to innovate and you have to demo that, and that gave people a lot of opportunity to go back, sit back, do something on their own in a different way, and then they will have an opportunity to put their innovation in a queue, and they will get a chance to demo that. So that was just a quick example which I can just call out. So multiple things any agilist can do, but the goal should be to whenever they find this umber sign that people are not really having a sense of wonder, then there is a stop gate. We have to stop there via multiple ways. In one of the session I was listening few days back, somebody called out that some of the good organizations, maybe big companies in the world, they are having this concept of 7-step idea scrapper, that if somebody comes across an idea, and if he or she goes to someone and they are talking about that idea, if that idea a particular person is not liking or he's not finding a value into that, that will not get stopped there. The culture have been built in a way that he or she will get another chance to propose that idea to one more person, to another team, and find if there is some value. So people are already doing those sort of things, with an intention that they do not want to really scrap the ideas, but really multiply from them. If even if there is a small potential, by coming together, by having a collective wisdom, people want to leverage that. So as a journey to becoming an real agile organization, which is looking for more agility day after day, sprint after sprint, and every now and then creating these sort of things are very important when people are leveraging things from whatever point they have into their hands. And again, it goes back to the hiring process. So as an example, if an organization is talking about the wandering mind and creativity and innovation even from the starting and hiring times, then that will start inculcating in the new hires as well as the people who are already working in the company, because they keep talking about it again and again. And that way they become very, very cognizant of the fact that creating a sense of wonder is very much important when we really want to foster the agility. That was the thing
Can
at this
I
point.
ask you a question here,
Yeah.
Mahesh? So, I mean, all interesting things what you've spoken about IND. I like the IND version of it. Now, because you brought in sprints in the conversation, I'd like to ask you this question. How many, or open question for all of us actually, how many Scrum teams that you guys are working in your organizations have that appetite, right? Appetite to do IND is very important. I can come up with an idea tomorrow in my Scrum team. Imagine I'm a say I'm a part of the developers in the Scrum team, and I propose an idea to my product owner. So how many product owners or the organization executives who want to bring agility into their organizations have the appetite to say, okay, these are the planned features. I'll keep all those things aside. Bring your idea in. We'll try and execute that. We'll try and experiment that. What are your views on that, Mahesh?
Absolutely, Sri. I don't know if I called it out earlier or not, but we are absolutely looking for this kind of metaphor at the end of this presentation when we talk about the appetite. And when we say appetite, it is for a person or it is for an organization, because organization have their own history. People have their own history. They are coming from certain backgrounds, and people are always striving for that safety net via some or the other means. And it is always important to create a culture where by being vulnerable, people will grow from that, or by being vulnerable, people are building their careers. So from that perspective, when we talked about idea and somebody talking to their PO, so that it really itself, it starts from the ground, that people have to look at the idea. And we have very interesting topic coming up next that talks about the spike. So the key thing we are trying to propose here, that unknowns or new ideas or maybe radical ideas should always be, and it is just an opinion, but it still might make some sense for most of us, that radical ideas or new ideas should always be tied up with the word spike. If company is doing a lot of spike stories, they are allowing people. So maybe we'll touch upon that. We'll keep moving slowly, and we'll again move to come to that point, because that is going to be
No
a very
worries.
conversation.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And we are already there. So the next part is about old wiring, new wiring, and now pulling in influences to foster agility. So here's the interesting thing. As a company, when people want to call out ideas and go for them and not really worry about the failures, how do we do that? One of the key things is by creating a culture of celebrating small victories. So for example, in an organization, if people are having quarterly parties to celebrate something, or a kind of a celebration, and not anything in the middle, so maybe that is not really creating that culture that we are doing something to to gain small victories over the period of time. Then people are looking at doing something which ends up well, and in so well that they can celebrate that. But essentially, if a company has a culture, an organization, if we can build that culture, that small victory day after day, sprint after sprint, and every release or so people do, if we are celebrating that, then people are more prone to take more risk, and start enjoying the process of celebrating those small victories. And again, uh, as we see in agile values, A over B. So here is another A over B. So growing through unfolding over finishing. So people come from a background when they finish something and they find that they have grown through that, or they have accomplished something. But can we create that mindset that we are unfolding something, and through that we are growing? We are just not working towards finishing something, but we are working towards unfolding something, looking at something, leveraging from that, multiplying on the idea, and unfold how it really can come up and how it can really help us. So that is another thing. So very quick to A and B while creating a nimble organization we are putting up here is about celebrating small victories and growing through unfolding, rather than or over just finishing. So finishing is important, but unfolding is more important, is what we are looking at here. And then it comes to a very interesting point of a story of a spike. And to me, at least, I mean, I feel if a company, if we look at the Jira board of a particular team or a company, and if they do not have sufficient number of spike stories, then we can maybe understand the situation or the conditions of the system as a whole, that we are doing something only around the known parts. We are really not letting the developers, really not the team members and everyone or anyone to get into a space when we are analyzing something and just finding out if there is some value. And because Spike is so wonderful, Spike can actually be a story which can have multiple stories to be followed. It could be again a Spike story or a user story or a technical story for that matter. But a Spike, the beauty of the Spike story is that the Spike may end by saying that we do not require any further work from here on, or maybe we have some findings to build on. So that becomes very interesting. And having a backlog with certain number of Spike stories, it has a lot of benefits. To organization, we are exploring new ways of working, new ways of unfolding the products or the processes. To the developers, they are just not applying their mind, but they get an opportunity to apply their hearts as well, in a mixture of way. So they have opportunity to start something which really do not have a acceptance criteria. It could be just that we want to explore this, not a very fixed acceptance criteria for that matter. So spy stories, to me at least, when I was working earlier, and I always used to love the stories when it come to me, and if I get a spike story, that used to resonate a lot with me. So there was a lot of chances to be creative, to get innovative, to really not have a fixed boundaries to complete something at the end of the sprint. So I think having ample number of spike stories in an particular backlog of any particular organization, that will really and certainly help to get people get creative, break the boundaries, and become innovative into their own spaces in small or big capacities. Cool. At this point, again, another amber sign. If we are looking
So
at,
one question, Mahesh, on the spikes.
yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. So you said the multiple spike stories in the backlog. I think that one is fine. But what is the percentage of spike stories in a sprint would you prefer? Like,
So there is no right or
to,
wrong into that. It can really depend upon the phase in which that particular organization or that product is. If they are completely into the R&D space, when they are really developing something from the scratch, then the chances are there could be more than 50% of spy stories, because everything is analyzed and developed. And if the company has evolved through something and they have something in working, then there might be a 70-30, maybe kind of a proportion there. But maybe we should not actually restrict ourselves to 50 or 70 or 30. It could be really, yeah.
yeah, got your point that there isn't a right answer or fixed answer on this
Yeah,
one. So
absolutely.
if there are many spike stories, right? So at the end of the review, what do you do or what do you highlight? What kind of outcome would you put it?
Yeah, so the wonderful part about Spike is that it again comes back, and I saw Sri putting in that very beautifully, that Spike again comes back to building an appetite, because we want to build an appetite to take more risk, to go for experimentation, and Spike can very well foster that, because people are doing something without having much of a close boundaries. They are open to do something which might end up into more number of Spike stories, or it might end up into a good set of stories, or it might end up into not having anything to do after that. So that again comes back very well together. So we do something with free hands, and then we end up creating more appetite to take risk.
Okay, yeah, great, great. Thanks, Mahesh.
Absolutely. And then from leadership point of view, I was listening to somebody, and they talked about that the world is moving from CEO to CEO, and it was about chief executive officer to chief experimental officer. And this very much ties up back to the one of the agile principle that talks about the best architecture or the design. It comes from the collective wisdom of the people. And it is very important that earlier in the days, people used to have somebody who will always come up with a great idea, and he will just coin that up, and everybody will start executing that idea. But now is the time, because everyone is fully exposed to the new world, to digital things, and everyone is just finding everything into their own hands, onto their mobiles, onto their laptops, and any devices that they are using. So people themselves are observing, they also have their insights. So if, as a leadership, people start leveraging that collective wisdom of the people, then we are really there. And as a leadership, if people are talking about spikes and they are only asking for reasonable details, so somebody walks into somebody's space and he's coining out something, even if we have a starting thought there, are we good to give it a shot? Are we really looking for reasonable details, or are we asking people to come up with all the details in the beginning only? And there it starts joining those dots. Have reasonable details, do a spike, be experimental, and honor the collective wisdom of the people. And if you do that, we are removing that amber sign, that people then will start looking at the leader as a role model, and that culture will start flowing to each other, that this person he or she looks for reasonable details, he is open for experimentation, and he honors the collective wisdom. Then that sort of culture, it starts flowing through the people, and collectively people become more experimental, and that really fosters the agility, is what looks absolutely wonderful when we are looking at creating a nimble organization.
Mahesh, one question. I hope you are taking question throughout the discussion,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
we have
thanks.
kept a lot of.
Thanks. I think in this slide and the previous slide, we are discussing like we should not fix the DOR. We should be reasonably flexible, where people can give the story, we can do the spike, and then come through the spike story, what is the approach which is on the right approach, and collective will use collective intelligence and move forward. So how as a team will come to know how much DOR is good, because not having a DOR as itself is a pain. Having a very strict DOR is that how it will restrict ourselves, and we will again go back to the SDLC. So how will ensure that we are striking the balance?
Hmm. I think some of the key metrics in Scrum, they talk about a story in progress state. So that could be one of the thing. I'm really not absolutely on that, but I think if we start looking at the story, by the time they stay in progress state, and if we are having too much of that, then there would be a situation when maybe we are not having sufficient details into our definition of ready, coming from definition of ready. But then there is a balancing act. If we are completing stories after story, just sprint after sprint, not struggling anywhere, just starting and finishing, then maybe we are again doing the same thing. When we are analyzing something, we are putting something into the process, and we are finishing that out. And that again comes relates back to the kind of organization that we have. At some organization that might also work, but still creating a space. So for an example, somebody is building an UI application that is going to create an end experience. And if we have a good set of DOR, people get a design document and they develop that, and that goes into production. Instead of that, if we have some sort of bit of bit of buffer in between where people have a design document, they develop something, and they are good to quickly demo that, quickly have a look at that, or maybe even while they are developing, if they have the ability to go back and just course correct a bit of small thing, and again make that experience more valuable than the earlier state, then we are really agile. We are really moving up fast, inspecting, adapting so fast that we are really not waiting until the demo day, but we are inspecting and adapting within the sprint itself. So that might look like a very beautiful sign, and maybe the product owner or the stakeholders would find it so meaningful that we had an initial idea that got refined throughout the sprint or through the execution, and we are seeing something which is more valuable than its initial state.
Yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
Hey, hi Mahesh, Sundar here. I have got a question. Can I ask you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So you touched upon in terms of people being really innovative or look for opportunities within the iteration wherein they need to focus on innovation aspect as well. So right, and touching upon what Sri has asked earlier, I mean, let's take two categories. One is product and one service. All right. So product-based companies always have an appetite wherein they really wanted to staying competitive in the market. For example, service-based organization, for example, like let's take whatever companies we have, and then we are providing service to the customers. This all nails down to top-down approach. So if the customer doesn't really have an appetite, rather than they say just okay, let's just deliver the business value what we are focusing on, but there are customers who really appreciate the innovation. So in those scenario, first question to you is how do you help, or what are the ways do you think that we can influence the top-down management in a service-based organization to cater the needs of being innovative? That's the first question. Second question, if you take some frameworks out in the market, especially I can take one example of SAFe prescribes an IP planning, which is innovation and program increment planning at the end of every once in 3 months. So they forcefully have a framework wherein innovation is part of it. What is your recommendation? Should that be driven through the framework, or is there any other ways that you can think of wherein we can have innovation as a continuous prospect within the team?
Yeah, absolutely. They will try to talk about the first one, and that might again overlap the second question as well, where we are looking at a framework to have innovation or as a culture. So when we talk about building that appetite and really influencing those sort of customers which are coming from a background where they do not really appreciate innovation, but they appreciate more revenues and more output, that could be a situation. But those are the times when we can pick up some small pieces of innovation. It could be very small piece. It could be a quick process improvement or quick process automation, or it could be a little change. So we can pick that as a small item and we can showcase the value out of it. So it is very hard to sell this idea to somebody that you are doing something, but let's completely change the course, because at the end of the day, some business goals always have to align with the process that we are coming in together. So the end goal should be maybe winning products and winning teams. So if we look at that perspective, that we want to have a winning product as well as a winning team, then how can we make sure that they are doing something that is making them happy? And one of the way to look at it is getting started very small. So starting small and winning big, that could be one of the idea. So you pick up very thin slice of system and you start small and you do something on top of it. And if you can achieve a significant and valuable or maybe a meaningful win, then next time maybe, and that is going to be a kind of metaphor that we are going to talk about, that the way we build our body, maybe in terms of the health that we talk about, and maybe somebody striving for building a better muscular body or something, they get started with smaller things, smaller iteration, day after day, some nutrition in between, and then building up on that, and that way we develop something. So similarly, when we are looking at organizations which are really comfortable into their own spaces, we have to pick those thin slices, we have to do something on top of it, we have to foster that culture, that culture of multiplying and love for unknowns. So in any system there will be always some parts which are really unknown, but people are really still happy playing with their known parts. So again, it goes back to the point where we look for the unknowns and we grow through them. So, and that is how the culture and the framework they start coming together, where whether we are doing SAFe or we are doing Scrum, if we have that culture that people grow through unfolding the unknowns, then we are there.
Cool. Thank you, Mahesh.
Cool. And we'll just drive this discussion to the last point, I think we are, and it's a very good sign that we are talking about something that is actually pointing to the next thing that we want to talk about, and it's about the goal. So as an agilist, as scrum masters, what we are essentially doing is that the people or the organization, everyone have their backgrounds, and everyone have their own appetite to take the risk or look at the experiments, or to they will have their own goals. But so this is a very quick symbolized metaphor that we are working towards iteration after iteration, which we naturally do when we are trying to be agile. But if we are trying to build our appetite through this process, then we are actually becoming and fostering a very healthy appetite for people as well as organization. So we are looking at system as a part when initially they are not really very much prone to the experimentation, like we just talked about one of the example, product versus the other sort of companies. And then they have a certain appetite, and if as a leader, as agilist, as a scrum master, or any role that we are playing in the system, if we imbibe that spirit of experimentation, if we say that let's get started small and achieve big, so through those small efforts, maybe the company will start finding the value. So maybe a particular company might be investing some amount of money or some amount of effort into experimentation, but after finding subtle and small and valuable things on the way, maybe that appetite will start growing. And that should be our end goal. If we, it's a very small metaphor or small picture, but if we having had this discussion, if we try to just put all the things together, in terms of the unknowns, in terms of the experimentation, in terms of multiplier mindset, or in terms of spike stories, or having reasonable DOR, if we bring them together, and if we have this visual picture into our mind that we are working towards building an appetite for the company, that we are doing our stuff, we are finishing things, we are looking at continuous delivery in every aspect, and we are looking at outcomes. But at the end of the day, we want to create that craft, that we are doing something which is really very valuable, and that is creating winning products as well as winning team. So we are creating that balanced outcome, when people are finding it very happy to come to the workplace every day, when they have a lot of opportunity to experiment, to put forward their thoughts, not really fear about the failure, and start giving it a shot. If that becomes a culture, and through that, if we start becoming a company with a healthier appetite, then I think we are already there. We can happily call out that we are agile. And when we say we are agile, we are practicing agility into our life, into our way of working, and we are becoming day after day. I think that was the last thing, and it is just coming on my face. I'll adjust my face here. But that was the last thing I wanted to call out and keep this discussion open for us to maybe touch upon the things that we just discussed. Maybe pick up something and we can have build a conversation on that. But essentially, I will be really happy if having this discussion and having this metaphor in front of our eyes, if we can take up something from here and build something out of it, then we are really there.
Uh, all good things said, Mahesh. I think we have really touched upon the core stuff, which we all need at this point. Um, but I'm coming back to a basic question now. Okay, we understood all the good things are happening and good things will happen if we start tweaking our mindset a little, right? So, question to you is, where do I start? If I'm a layman, I know a bit of agile, bit of scrum, and I am a scrum master in an organization where I aspire to see my organization as an agile organization. Whether it's a captive setup, whether it's a service provider, I leave that to the interpretation. But in this situation, as a takeaway from this session for me, how will I put my first foot forward is the question. So, any tips, any recommendations on that, so that it's not my just one question. Possibly most of them have this question. What is the first step forward for us to go on that journey?
Absolutely. See, I was just taking some note while we are discussing this thing, and I just resonated with some of the cultures that I was very lucky to work with in some of the organizations, and I know some of the companies which are really holding the flag of their agile practices very high. They are really they have started at one point of time when they created a culture of community. That was first. Creating a culture of co-learning, that was second. And then going for experiments in a time box way. So in the beginning it looks like that we want to bring people together. We want to have initiatives when they are sharing knowledge, because when people are sharing knowledge, then there would be a place for idea, then those ideas will start coming up. And what do we really do when those ideas are coming out? Then do we have an ability or an understanding that we can, in the at least in the initial period, can we time box those things and slowly find some value out of it, so that as a person and as a company we start finding that appetite growing steadily, that we picked up something out of a knowledge sharing session as a community and we tried to build on that, and that showed some significant output. And next time if that same group of people, if they go up to somebody and say, this time we have got a better idea, but this time we think we need more time, we need to invest more time, then that will come out and as a very natural flow. They don't have to really do anything for that. So putting experiments into small time box in the beginning, starting small, achieving big, and in the background creating that culture of community and knowledge sharing. That is one thing I think one can get started with. So having people coming together, sharing knowledge and picking up small ideas in a time box way, I think that would be a sort of start to
Okay.
start building a healthier appetite.
So essentially, all of us here on this call, the way you see us tomorrow, we go straight in as change agents. Now, when you say change agent, we go in and we challenge the system. We bell the cat, if I may use that metaphor. We will have to take that step, whether you are in the capacity of an agile scrum master, project manager, agile coach, or whatever you are, whether you're a coder sitting and coding Java in your agile team, you are a potential change agent in that system in order to challenge the ecosystem at the first place. And of course, there's a thin element of authority you have in the organization, because if I am a coder, I don't know how much I'm empowered to really bring this change into the system.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, the mindset, I totally get what you're saying. The mindset and the culture comes from us. If we don't change, there is no formal training for you to say, hey, come, let's increase the appetite and then go back in 1 week. I don't think that's going to work. So each of us from this session, at least I'm going to take away that we go challenge the system, we bell the cat. Somebody has to address the elephant in the room, and that is you. Uh, I mean, others can chime in. That is the interpretation of what Mahesh has been talking for the last 1 hour, and that's probably the first step ahead for all of us today. Am I right? Any other views? Anybody on the interpretation, guys? Or do you think you've seen it all, and there is something else that possibly a feedback to Mahesh or myself in terms of what is the reality in the service oriented organizations? Feel free to share your experiences.
See,
Yeah, I
Siri,
just
just
want.
now you
Go on.
mentioned, right, that be the change you want to see in others. So even the topic was about experimentations, right? So certainly we will have to try out. So how do we implement? I think the best answer would be try out. If that doesn't work, try something else. And it, as you mentioned very clearly, it should start with me. Yeah, that's also I echo that. A wonderful session, I think. Um, thought provoking. I will have to see it again.
Yeah,
Good.
of
Good.
course.
Yeah,
Thank
Recording will be available anyway. Yeah,
few
go ahead.
new terminologies that is great. And this was the last point is we have to start from ourselves rather than saying, and everybody knows now lot of things is changing rather than going with the standard DOR and all. Mahesh has already put that one, and I and D is a really great point to think on that. Means there are, then don't wait for the demo session. Why can't we give it in between, so that if there are any changes, then we can pick it up and give a productive product to the customer rather than just to give what he's looking for. Why can't we give a suggestions to the product rather than it's a directive rather than the directive way. We as a collaborative way, we should add on or the positive points or whatever our suggestions or the mm, points can be put up in front of everyone. That is what I can think of, and this is really great session, Mahesh. Thank you, and Shri, always thanks to you, because you are getting the people like this, and that is really helping us to understand the new things as well as try to implement such kind of stuff in our day-to-day activities. So thanks.
Good,
Thank you, Shri.
Gustav, Uday, thank you very much for your comments.
Absolutely.
I did not
And listening to
pick
this,
Mahesh. He came and he volunteered. This is a volunteer group, right? So I did not go to anybody. They come up and say, "Hey, I'd want to talk in your session." So we just paved the way for them. Sorry, Mahesh, I cut you off in
yeah,
between.
no, see, it's just resonating. It's just a sense of community that we come at one point of time together and we find out the next opportunity to build on. And I was just thinking that the podcast that we just recorded some days back, and it is there. So one of the topic was failures, and we wanted to discuss failures, and it is, I think, it is very apt to discuss that at this point of time when we are looking at the outcomes of this particular talk or workshop. So the Vasco Duarte, who does that Scrum Master Toolbox podcast, he was asking on one of the episodes that what is your story of failure? And I was just thinking for first some time, and I understood that if a particular experiment that really do not have any collateral benefits, if we did not find any other opportunity to build on, if we did not find any other way to walk by, then that might become a failure. But essentially, when we are in a system, when people are looking at failures, I think we really are in a system when we should not really worry about that. And I think sometimes we have to really try before we call it as it did not work. So we are very lucky that we are all in this kind of an era when trying out and failing and looking at failure as not failure but learning is really happening. And I think that comes out very well together as people, as in terms of organization, and then on top of it building agility. So looking at
Yeah,
failures is one perspective, and then learning from that, trying out, is absolutely the thing that we should be looking at.
it's not just IT, right, Mahesh? Because imagine government of India and UK, um, how they have dealt with COVID, right? So that is a classic example for experimentation.
Yeah.
So initially, all these phased wise lockdown which happened in India, how did they call out that? That is basically the experimentation. At least in the UK, how they have dealt with it for last 1 year is exactly the way they wanted to experiment first, see the increase or decrease of the count. Then they had to enforce a few lockdowns. The same thing they inspected and then they adapted. So experimentation is everywhere. It is not just about IT, and it's not just about building IT products alone. It is everywhere. In your own daily lives, you want to see how your children behave and then act accordingly as a parent. So you think about it, there is experimentation.
Yeah.
So I think you have rekindled those thoughts today. Especially, that's my feedback for you, where we all knew something is there called experimentation. We all have been doing that in our lives, but these thoughts that you have provoked, that were kind of sleeping or in hibernation in our mind, you have just kicked them up and sparked them up now. Now we'll have to continue bring that to light in our own workplaces, in our professional and personal lives, to see experimentation is the core of innovation, right? Even your failure, what you said, accepting failure gracefully is a character of a good leader or an effective leader. So you are a leader today, and everybody on this call, we are all individual leaders today. So keeping failures, accepting failures gracefully, experimenting, I think, is the core takeaway for all of us from this session, right? Anything else to add on, anybody, before I kind of go to the last segment of the session?
Sri, just want to thank Mahesh. I've just put on the chat as well. So, I mean, you have really packaged it very well, Mahesh. So all been spread across. I mean, even though we have listened to all this in terms of we know, but you have packaged it very well. You crafted a very good story to us. And as Sri said, echoing Sri, that you've rekindled the thought process, and we're going to start again from now. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Good. Rudra, you unmuted yourself.
Yeah, I'm also trying to say thank you very much, Mahesh, for bringing this session to us, and thanks, Sri, for connecting the dots between Mahesh and myself and others in this forum. And yes, big thanks to both of you.
Thank you very much, Rudra.
Session is really very good. Yeah, thank you.
Super. Okay, Mahesh, any last minute thoughts before I kind of conclude this whole session for us by talking to people about the review for the session formally in the tool? Do you have any last minute thoughts, Mahesh?
No, I'm just calling it aloud, that looking at the this Prezi that it just brought together in terms of an experiment of maybe again an experiment. It is giving us a very good picture altogether. I don't know, but I mean it sticks to us when it is a visual, and I think that was one of the things I was trying to do. That we talk about something that is very visual into our minds, and it boils down to a metaphor which we can always resonate with, and which we can always experiment with. So that will be my closing thought, and I will be really happy to hear from other folks. Again, we can connect on other channels and we can keep talking about it. But really, a very wonderful experience to talking to all of us.
Thank you, Mahesh. Likewise, so after you finish the session, everybody, there is this review option on UVCT for this session, guys. As you know, experimentation should be followed by feedback. Otherwise, there is no takeaways from the experiment, right? So feedback, which means retrospective, which means we need retrospective comments from you, improvement comments from you, for us to improve and bring these kind of effective sessions in 2021 as well. As I said, this is the last session for us in 2020, and after you finish this, you will get the recording after you kind of give your comments on the session itself. You go back to reviewing the course or the session, and there is a star rating and the comments section provided to you. Put your star rating, put the comments, be it good, be it positive, be it negative, everything we need. So based on that, I can pass on those comments to Mahesh or myself. If anybody's got the way we've run APGI sessions in 2020, anything for that matter, just go ahead and put that there. And the recording of this will be available on YouTube. I will send out all the recordings on all the social channels of YouTube. So please subscribe, like our Twitter, Insta, YouTube channels for APGI, where we've put up all the meetup recordings that we've had in 2020. All great speakers like Mahesh. We've had a few eminent speakers sitting on this call today, speaking about a lot more critical topics, which you can bring into your daily jobs to increase the productivity. So please watch out these video recordings on YouTube channel, and also don't forget to provide your comments for the session on UVCT tool. All right. Look forward or watch out on UVCT or many other social channels of APGI for next year's events. Hopefully, as I said, if Government of India permits us to meet again, we are waiting to schedule a face-to-face conference in Pune, where we usually have 240 plus people coming in. So that's a big arena for us to talk, learn, spread agile awareness. So that is something which you can watch out for. If not, we always there on virtual. We'll continue to do the same thing for the rest of the next year as well. This being the last session of this season. If there is any parting thoughts from anybody, please feel free to unmute yourself and talk now. Otherwise, I wish you all a Merry Christmas and a very Happy New Year. Hopefully 2021 is not as similar as 2020 for us. It should brighten our lives up both professionally and personally. Thank you very much for your time, everybody. Have a good day. Good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Merry
Thank you.
Christmas and Happy
Mahesh,
New Year, guys.
Manju here. Great session, and thanks for being part of APGI forum. And of course, a round of applause and kudos to Shri and entire APGI UK team for bearing this flag for this entire year. I know this was not an great moment. We started with a physical conference concept, but we ended up closing year with a great line of speakers and a lot of sessions. Thank you, Shri, and entire APGI UK team for volunteering and running this show. And folks, this forum is always open for many practitioners like you who can come and share your experience and expertise on various topics. Let's continue to do that, and wish you all a very good, happy holidays, and take care.
Cheers, Manju. Thank you very much. Thanks for that. Great. Thank you, everyone. Bye. Have a
Thank
nice
you.
evening.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Bye now.
Bye.
Thank you all. Take
Thank
care.
you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.